Right, so the Qataris look like the favourites to take over at Manchester United. I'm sure you've all been keeping up to date with what's going on, so let's get straight into who Manchester United should be looking to sign, with the financial power of the Qataris behind them. But before I go any further, a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, 1xBet.
1xBet and Eva Elfie present 1x Games, eSport betting, sports betting and casino. More than 100 different games, the highest odds and the widest line, as well as roulette, slots, poker. All this in the app and on the 1xBet website. 1xBet. Play with Eva.
But before I start naming individual players, let me just break down my strategy. So under Glazer ownership over what is nearly 2 decades now, despite it being feasible for United to constantly be competing with the biggest clubs in Europe in the transfer market, it was just something that was never going to be implemented by the people that run the club. However, under the new Qatari ownership, that would definitely change. United, even without the Qataris, are a financial superpower in the transfer market, generating the 5th most income of any club in world football, with a total of $663 million reportedly brought in, behind only Barcelona in 4th, Bayern Munich in 3rd, Real Madrid in 2nd, and Manchester City at the top of the list. Now there is an imposter on this list lying about how much revenue they're actually taking in. No prizes for guessing who, so in reality United are bringing in the 4th most revenue of any club in world football. Add on to the fact that United are the only Premier League club in the top 4 of this list, which definitely gives them financial stability over the next decade or so, as well as Barcelona having other more complicated financial issues, Bayern Munich not really being the type of club to compete for the biggest players on the transfer market, for the biggest wages and the biggest fees, and Real Madrid seemingly shifting their transfer strategy over the last half decade or so. And I think it's fair to say that United, particularly with a Qatari takeover, would probably be the strongest club in the world when it comes to the transfer market. And so this means that there are going to be very few players who are unattainable for United to sign. And so my Qatari transfer strategy would actually be heavily inspired by the Galacticos at Real Madrid. Now I know what you're thinking, the Galacticos? Didn't that fail for Real Madrid not once but twice? Well yes, kind of. The first edition of the Galacticos from 2000 to 2006 under Florentino Perez was definitely a failure, with Madrid only winning La Liga and the Champions League once in that period. And towards the end they were definitely just signing players because of their names rather than what they would offer to the squad. But when in 2009 Florentino Perez returned to Real Madrid after previously leaving in 2006, we saw him implement this policy yet again, and this time had a lot more success. Yes, there were massive failures like Kaká, who was signed in the summer of 2009 for a world record £57 million, and by anyone's assessment didn't work out at all. However, if you do look at Real Madrid's most successful period, in their modern history from 2013 to 2018 where they won the Champions League 4 times, that whole team was really built around the Galactico ideology. Now don't get me wrong, Florentino Perez's Galactico transfer strategy did have its issues, and if you are going to implement this for Manchester United, you definitely need some adaptations. However, with the financial backing of Qatar essentially making United the most attractive club in the transfer market in terms of the ability to sign big players, pay big wages, and also most importantly now compete on the pitch with a manager like Ten Hag at the helm, I think with this Galactico transfer strategy, which I'm about to explain, United could dominate not just domestically but also European football as well. And so rather than just doing what Real Madrid did in the early to mid 2000s, where they essentially just looked at who was the best and the biggest names in football at the time and looked to sign them regardless of how many players they were actually bringing in that area, which inevitably led to conflict in the squad with players not suiting the system and not being able to play alongside each other cohesively. What you instead want to do for a Galactico project is identify the best players for the system, rather than signing players and then trying to find the best system for those players. So let's get into it. So come the summer, where do United need to improve? Now I have got a whole transfer series where in the first episode I did go over the positions that United need to improve, so I'll leave that video along with the others linked in a playlist in the description for you to check out. But just briefly, I definitely think United need an improvement on David De Gea, not in terms of his shot stopping, as I do think David De Gea is probably top 3 best goalkeepers in world football at the moment, but he's just not the ideal keeper for Ten Hag's style of play. I will do a separate video going into that in more detail, but I think most people who understand the importance of a ball-playing keeper in modern day football will look at David De Gea, particularly with his contract expiring at the end of the season, and see the opportunity for United to bring in a better ball-playing keeper, who of course still has to be a top-level shot stopper, but would be a massive improvement for United in terms of the build-up phase and beating the opposition's press. So that's one of the main positions I would be looking to improve, as well as a central midfielder to partner Casemiro. This central midfielder needs to have the press resistance to drop deep in the build-up phase, be able to turn out of pressure and drive the attack forward, whilst also having the creativity to break lines with their passing from deep, whilst also having the tactical intelligence and positional fluidity to be able to float into a number of different positions in possession, whilst also being a central midfielder that would suit Ten Hag's aggressive pressing style as well. And obviously everyone and their nan knows that United need a centre forward, who first and foremost is an elite level goal scorer, but the player also needs to have some other abilities, such as maybe dropping off from the forward line, being able to link the play, being able to create high quality chances for his teammates, potentially having the physicality to play as a target man, being able to run down the channels, whilst also being able to lead a high press. Now obviously it's going to be hard to find a centre forward that encompasses all of these attributes, but at the top level, any centre forward needs to be as complete as possible. So goalkeeper, central midfield and centre forward are the three main positions that United do need to be improving. But United can't just rest there, as that will give them a fantastic starting 11. But as we know from recent experiences, with Eriksen and Casemiro both being absent for some games, with Eriksen's absence being long term, United do need quality and depth in order to compete on all fronts, not just in the Premier League, but also in the Champions League and in the cup competitions as well. But as well as identifying the main positions that need to be improved in the starting 11, United, with the Qatari financial backing behind them, United can also identify and pursue the generational talents available on the market. For me, the obvious one is Kylian Mbappe. Not only is he already the best player in world football at the moment, but he's only 24 years old, so he's likely to get even better as he approaches his late 20s, early 30s. People will say that they don't want him because of his massive wages or his ego, but I just think that's completely nonsense and one of the worst football opinions out there. If you want to compete at the top of the game and bring in the best players, you're going to have to deal with egos, and that is something that over the last decade Real Madrid have perfected, and I think that's a massive reason why we've seen them dominate European football. Now people are going to point out that United have Jadon Sancho and Antony, as well as Garnacho, who can play on the right side, but again it's just a nonsensical point from people who I just don't think understand what it actually takes to win big trophies at the top level. You need players like Mbappe in your squad, and whilst I do think Antony has potential to be a top level player, with Sancho and Garnacho also players that I do think will be United stars for the next decade or so, they're not Mbappe. Just by having Mbappe in your squad, you become a Champions League contender. He's that good. Also, if you actually look at where Mbappe could go if he was to leave PSG, which I do think will happen in the next 1 or 2 years, it's really only Real Madrid and Manchester United, and it appears that Real Madrid aren't going to push for him as heavily as they did last summer, and so whilst the Mbappe-Real Madrid connection is cold, United could take advantage. The transfer fee alone would likely be in excess of £200 million, and his wage package would be absolutely enormous, but in my opinion Mbappe would be worth it and be a complete game changer for Manchester United. Other generational talents that United should be looking at, but likely not both, would be Jude Bellingham and Frankie de Jong. Now Bellingham is younger, being 19 compared to de Jong who's 25, but I think both players are young enough, but that doesn't really make much of a difference because United now have the funds to sign players with the next 2 to 3 years in mind, rather than having to focus ahead for the next 7 to 9 years, for example. De Jong would obviously be ideal and likely would be Ten Hag's choice as well, perfectly fitting that role alongside Casemiro, but with the position that Xavi's Barcelona are currently in, I think it's highly unlikely that either de Jong or Barcelona push for this move, and so he's not really on the market, but Jude Bellingham definitely is. Now some people may label Bellingham as overrated just because he's English, but regardless of his nationality and even his age, Bellingham is one of the best central midfielders in world football at the moment, and just by glancing at his FBref report you can see this, as he pretty much excels in every area that is critical for a modern day central midfielder, being excellent defensively in terms of putting in tackles and intercepting, whilst also having excellent energy and athleticism, making him perfectly suited to a high pressing system. And critically for Ten Hag's United, he's also an excellent ball progressor, whether this is from his incisive passes into players between the lines, the ability to switch play with long range passes as well as having the press resistance to turn out of pressure and drive the ball up the pitch, having the same sort of ability as Frankie de Jong to take on players in central areas. And in the final third, not only does he offer the chance creating ability that someone like Christian Eriksen provides, but he's also got the ability to break into the box and get into goal scoring positions himself. And so Jude Bellingham really is an all-round central midfielder in every sense of the word. And given that he's only 19, I think if United can get him even for something in between 100 and 120 million pounds, I think it's a deal they have to do, as not only is he going to dramatically improve United right now, but he could also also be a focal point in the midfield for the next decade and beyond. Now, in terms of the goalkeeper position, my standout choice would be Marc-Andre ter Stegen. But I think it's incredibly unlikely that he leaves Barcelona anytime soon, so I wouldn't say he's available. But the two other ball-playing goalkeeper options I'd be looking at for United this season would be Diogo Costa at Porto and Manuel Neuer at Bayern Munich. Now, I'd be happy with either of these two. I think both would definitely suit the system, being wonderful passers of the ball, as well as being excellent sweeper keepers as well. With Neuer being 36 and Costa being 23, it may look like the Porto man does have the advantage, but obviously Costa is going to have to improve certain aspects of his game, so it may be worth bringing in Manuel Neuer for a season or two, as I still think he's one of the best goalkeepers in the world, and he'd also bring a vast amount of experience to the side, but either one I'd be happy with. And so now we have got a goalkeeper, a central midfielder in Jude Bellingham and Kylian Mbappe, but we would still need a centre forward to play in that front three alongside Rashford and Mbappe. Now, I think every United fan would agree that the two standout options are Victor Osimhen and Harry Kane, and to be honest, I think there's not much between them. Both are definitely world class at the moment, and apart from Haaland, Lewandowski and Karim Benzema, they're probably the two best centre forwards in world football. However, because in this scenario I am focused on bringing in Kylian Mbappe, maybe not this summer but at least next summer, my choice for a centre forward would be Harry Kane, just because I think he's more of a withdrawn centre forward, playing more of that false 9 deeper lying forward role, whereas I would say that Osimhen is more of an advanced forward. And so if we look at who's the best stylistic fit with Rashford and Mbappe either side in the front three, I would say Harry Kane, as there's a good argument to make that he's the most complete centre forward in world football at the moment, up there alongside Karim Benzema and Lewandowski. I think having Harry Kane drop off from the forward line, looking to pick up the ball between the lines, and from here you can essentially use Mbappe and Rashford as wide forwards from this position, with Kane having the ability to thread those through balls to find either player. And I think if United could get all of these three players in the same team in a front three together, I think it would be without doubt the best front three in world football. And so my four main targets for a Galactico transfer strategy would be Manuel Neuer or Costa. I could do with either, but let's go with Manuel Neuer for example. Harry Kane, Mbappe and Jude Bellingham would radically improve United's starting 11 and instantly give them a side that could compete with practically anyone else in the world. United should also be looking to dispense of squad players like Fred, McTominay, maybe Wan-Bissaka, but the jury's still out on him, whilst also allowing Weghorst and Sabitzer to leave at the end of the season as well. And so those players would need to be replaced as well, but rather than replacing them with stopgaps as United have had to do over the last few seasons, you now have the opportunity to dramatically improve United's quality and depth. Just off the top of my head, replacing Maguire could be Jurrien Timber, replacing Fred I'd say Maxime Kakare, and then potentially bringing in someone like Marcus Thuram at the end of the season who would be available on a free, and allow United to cut their losses with Anthony Martial, who is entering the last year of his contract. As not only could United get some money for Martial, but they now have a centre forward as a backup who's actually going to be fit when needed. And so now if you look at this potential Galactico squad that Ten Hag could have at his disposal under the Qatari budget, compared to the one that he currently has this season, you can see how much difference it would make. And not only would it give United the best squad domestically, but it would probably also give them the best squad in world football. So that was just a brief outline of what the Qatari budget could do for Manchester United's squad. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you do get notified when my videos come out, and you can check the description for more videos as well.